Welcome ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to check out the solo Magicka Templar PvE build for the Greymoor chapter. Like always, timestamps in the description below, and if you're looking for a written guide, it's on alcasthq.com, link in the description below too. With this setup you will be able to solo overland, public dungeons, world bosses, 4-man normal or even veteran dungeons if you're experienced enough, so pretty much anything is possible. We will also have different gear setups, you don't need to worry if you don't have like the best in slot setup. So let's take a look at the stats real quick. Max Magicka, max health and stamina. The maximum Magicka is not that important, however, you should always have around 18 to 20k health on solo Magicka builds because it will prevent a lot of one-shots. So if you feel like you have too much health, you could actually put more points into Magicka. But I feel like this is a good level. And same with stamina. The reason why stamina is so important is because we are dodge rolling a lot. Whereas in a group, the tank will probably take aggro off the hard-hitting monsters. As a solo player, you don't have that luxury. Therefore, dodge rolling in the right moment can be very, very helpful. Instead of getting hit by a 30k fist, you will get 0 damage. Just for one dodge roll. Obviously, you need to time it correct. Otherwise, it might still hit you. The other chance, or the other option you have, is you can block to mitigate damage as well. And all that needs stamina. So 15k is a very good amount to cover all that. Other than that, maybe I can quickly talk about the crit. If we are fully buffed, we have like 73% spell crit, which is really nice, and a lot of spell damage. I'm a fan of crit, so whenever I can boost my spell crit it's good, because it also fits the setup really well. The Lover Mundus Stone. I usually pick that one because it gives me the highest spell penetration, and that will amp up our damage a lot. Talking about buff food real quick, so that's very important. A lot of people don't run the right buff food or the right potions. And they will increase the power of your character by a lot. So for this setup, for the tier 1 setup, so the best in slot setup, we use Bewitched Sugar Skulls or Longfin Pasty with melon sauce. They're basically the same thing. This one is just a little bit stronger, but it's also more expensive. Whereas this one is very cheap, like you can get it very cheap in the guild stores. If you don't have the money, you can always pick that one. Or Witchmother's Potent Brew, which we use for the second or the beginner setup. Because we are running False Gods here. This will allow us to actually run Tri-Stat, but otherwise if we don't have False God we will lose a lot of sustain. So therefore we need to come up with sustain from somewhere else, and Witchmother's Potent Brew would cover that. You can also buy that one for a very cheap price in the guild stores. And both the Witchmother and the Bewitched Sugar Skulls can be used from level 1. And they will always give the same stats. So they're very, very strong. Potions. For this setup, I usually just use the spell power pots because I'm used to it. And you can buy that in the store because they give Major Sorcery, Major Prophecy and Major Intellect. Now on this setup, you don't necessarily need Prophecy because Reflective Light. When you read the second text upon activation, you gain Major Prophecy, increasing your spell critical by 10%. So you already have that covered, and technically you could use Entropy to get Major Sorcery. That would allow you to run the normal potions. Because these ones here are a little bit overkill. But I usually always prefer this, because sometimes when I forget to apply Reflective Light, my crit might drop. And that's a huge loss, and with this one the uptime is always guaranteed. You just have to make sure to go to the alchemy crafting here, get it to 50, it takes like 20 minutes. I have a guide on the website as well in the crafting section. And then medicinal use. The potions last 30% longer. Very nice. Usually they only last like 33 seconds, and with their passive they last 47 seconds. The potion cooldown is 45, so you can get 100% uptime on all these buffs. You will see most endgame players when you watch videos from people, they constantly activate this the moment it's off cooldown. So you really should get used to it, even if you only use the normal potions, because they increase your sustain by such an amount. And if you use the expensive ones, you also get a huge damage boost. In terms of race, all Magicka based races work. However, Breton or High Elves are my favorites. Breton gives you really good sustain, whereas High Elf has a little bit more damage because 258 spell damage and 2000 max Magicka on top of extra sustain for a Templar. And here the nice thing is, when you read the second text, when you're using an ability with a channel or cast time, you take 5% less damage. Puncturing Sweeps is a channeled ability and pretty much our main spammable, so that will have a super high uptime. So we also get a little bit of damage mitigation out of that, which is nice. But again, it's not mandatory. You could run a Breton, a Dark Elf, a Khajiit, whatever floats your boat. Should you be a vampire? It's not optimal, but you could definitely make it work if you want to go for it. But sustain will be a little bit tougher. Just keep that in mind. Now here I will show you the tier 1 setup and explain why I like these sets so much. On the website I have a tier 2 and advanced setup and the beginner setup in case you don't have access to these. False God, pretty much the best Magicka set in the game for any activity actually. Why is this so good? It gives you spell crit, minor slayer, another spell crit, another spell damage, and a max Magicka bonus if you have the perfect version. The imperfect version is still better than most other sets. So you can get the imperfect version from normal Sunspire, which is very easy to complete. You just need to find a guild that you can run it with. So I would usually start working on that right away. You don't need the perfect version. The imperfect one is more than enough and is still stronger than any other set out there. Now the 5-piece bonus reduces the cost of your magic abilities by 8%. When an enemy you recently damaged dies, you restore 2150 Magicka and gain Major Expedition. 30% speed buff. So it gives us a lot of extra cost reduction. And then when we kill an enemy, we get 2000 Magicka back. That's why our overall Magicka recovery here is pretty low, because we don't really need it. Because we have False God. And when we use the tier 2 or tier 3 setup, we run Witch Mothers. So we have a little bit, like I can show you when I activate this now. It's at 1000 and with the potion we are at like 1200. So that's the difference. Imperfect versus perfect. The only difference there is the 5-piece bonus. The perfect version does have the 1096 Magicka, whereas the imperfect version doesn't have the bonus. But everything else is the same. That's why I say go get the imperfect one. It will be like pretty much as good as this one, just with a little bit less max Magicka. The second set is Mother Sorrow. You don't need gold jewelry, you don't need purple jewelry, you can just buy blue jewelry. It should cost you around 10k gold, it's not that expensive. Lightning Staff, you can get that one from a quest in Deshan. I made recently a video about this, I will also put it into the description. Takes like 10 minutes to get it. Very easy. And you don't need to pay any money. Why do I like this set so much? It just pumps up our crit damage. Yes, it is not active on the back bar, we lose a lot of crit there, but on the front bar it's active. And that's where we need it the most, because that's where we have our spammable. The reason why we run another set on the back bar is because of the Maelstrom Lightning Staff. You can get this one from normal Maelstrom Arena. If you want the perfect version, you gotta go veteran, but it doesn't make any difference. Like this one is more than fine, and it's fairly easy to complete normal Maelstrom Arena. The reason why this one is so strong is it pumps up our light and heavy attack damage. Even when we are on the front bar, when I activate this and I weapon swap to my front bar, it will actually still count and make our light and heavy attack stronger. Very nice. Ice Heart. One of my favorite sets because it gives me a 5000 damage shield for free. And usually it procs fairly fast when we have a few abilities on the ground. It already proc. Because it's pulsing, sometimes when I get knocked down and I didn't expect it, it still can proc Ice Heart and then actually absorb damage from me. If you want, you can run any other monster set, but Ice Heart, especially in harder content, when I was trying to run like veteran dungeons, this was my favorite pick. And the one piece bonus is also nice because you get spell crit. So I run 5 light, 1 medium, 1 heavy. That's because of the Undaunted passive, to give me 6% extra resources. Because we have a heavy armor piece, we also benefit from Juggernaut, which gives us another 2% max health. Then I have all divine enchants on divine traits on armor and Magicka enchantments everywhere. Just to pump up our max Magicka as much as possible. On jewelry, I just run the arcane trait. You could run Bloodthirsty with full spell damage. Then the shock stuff on the front bar is precise with a shock damage enchant, and on the back bar we have an infused weapon damage enchantment with a Maelstrom lightning stuff. So the reason why that is good is when we drop our blockade and swap to the front bar, this will actually keep proccing. You see the blockade is really strong. Even though we just run it on the back bar, we can weapon swap and then it will keep proccing. The enchantment, 452 spell damage for free. And also the crushing wall proc, which will amp up our light and heavy attack damage. Heavy attacks are very important. They first off restore resources, around 3000 Magicka every time you complete the heavy attack. And when the enemy is set off balanced, it will actually give you twice the amount of resources back, 6000 Magicka with 1 heavy attack. So that's also another way how we can sustain. That is this. Let's move on to the champion points. I do also have like a 300 and a 500-600 CP setup on the website if you don't have max champion points. 81 in Thaumaturge, 44, 11, 9, 64, 61, 56, 56. Tumbling, once again, is important. We need roll dodge cost reduction because we dodge roll a lot and also block a lot as a solo player. 49 in Arcanist, 49 in Tenacity, 2256. Then here we have 49, 49, 48, 43, 81. You can play around with this a little bit, it's up to you. As long as you invest all your points, you're good to go. Let's talk about a few of the nice passives that Templars have. First off, you have Piercing Spear. With an Aedric Spear ability slotted, increases your critical damage by 10%. We have the Punching Sweeps on the front bar. We have Crescent Sweep or the Blazing Spear on the back bar, so this will always be active. It increases your damage done to blocking targets by 10%. Nice freebie. And activating an Aedric Spear ability. Gain minor protection for 6 seconds, reducing damage taken by 8%. So essentially, by activating this here, we get 8% damage mitigation, and if you're a high elf, like I just mentioned before, you get another 5%. It's just quite nice. Next up, Burning Light. This is basically a free proc, so when we deal damage with either Puncturing, Spear or the ultimate, this can activate, and it's just like proc damage for free, and it deals a lot of damage. Then this one here, which bumps up our spell resistance a little bit, which is nice to have. Prism, you get a little bit of ultimate. Casting the Dawn's Ref ability generates free ultimate. We have Solar Barrage and Reflective Light. One on the front bar and the other one on the back bar. And casting the Dawn's Ref ability grants minor sorcery, increasing our spell damage by 10%. That's another nice thing that we have. And here reduces the health, Magicka stamina and ultimate cost by 5%. So these passives are just really great. Then we get a little bit extra healing from Mending. This one can be neglected, and yeah, these two, doesn't really matter. But Aedric Spear and Dawn's Wrath, they're very powerful, and they just like, they amp up our damage and damage mitigation at the same time. It's really nice. Destruction stuff, maybe the Destruction Expert is worth mentioning. With Destruction Stuff equipped, when you kill an enemy with a Destruction Stuff ability, you restore 3600 Magicka. So when Unstable Wall of Storm kills off enemies, that can proc. That's a lot of extra Magicka. Light Armor 3, first off, we get 4884 spell penetration. That's a huge damage boost. Then we get 10% spell crit for free because of this passive. A little bit extra spell resistances. Then also more Magicka recovery and Magicka cost reduction. You want to get most of them. Here, this one, it's nice to have, I guess, because it gives you snare reduction, but it's not mandatory. But these here are very strong. Like I mentioned before, because we run one heavy piece, you can actually get Juggernaut to benefit from 2% more max health, a little bit extra sustain, and damage mitigation through resistances. But the Juggernaut is most important. Passives here don't really matter. I will talk about Consuming Trap in a second. But like I mentioned before, if you don't want to use the expensive potions, you could run Degeneration here instead of Consuming Trap. That would be a good option. Undaunted passives, you want to get them. They're not mandatory, but they're nice to have because 6% extra resources can be helpful. In the Fighter's Guild, if you have it, get Banish the Wicked. You generate 9 ultimate when you kill an Undead, Daedra or Werewolf. High F passives, and then Alchemy, Medicinal Use. You need this one. When we look at our abilities, why do I have this particular setup? First off, we have the shield. 10k shield. So when enemy hits me in the face, instead of dealing my damage, I can just shield up. And then 10k is a lot. So essentially I have 30,000 health, right? As long as the shield is up. And I can spam this as much as I want, pretty much, no problem. Reflective Light is a damage over time effect. Will apply to the... It's funny, Ice Heart instantly proc. It will apply to the enemy. And it also procs Major Prophecy, so we get 10% more spell crit. If you're using these potions here, you already have that, so it doesn't really matter. But otherwise, you gotta keep this up. Punching Sweeps, this is like our shining star of the abilities. It deals single target and AoE damage, so you can hit several targets, you can keep moving around. It heals you. You heal for 40% of the damage done with this ability, and trust me, we deal a lot of damage. So as long as you keep using this ability, you cannot die, unless you get killed by a one-shot. Like on trash fights, when you have 10 enemies, you usually reapply your dots real quick, and then you spam this. And you're good to go. And it has also all the other benefits I just mentioned. Elemental Drain. This doesn't cost anything. You can apply this to the enemy. It reduces the enemy's spell resistance by 5280, so you will deal more damage. And also applies minor Magicka Steal. You get 300 Magicka back every 1 second. I always apply this to the highest health target, so it stays active as long as possible. If you place it on a low health enemy, it will instantly die and disappear. But if you place it on a high health enemy, it will stand there longer. The big guy will get more damage, because usually it's also the last one to die, and you benefit from the minor Magicka Steal. Once again, it doesn't cost anything, so use it. Consuming Trap, I consider this my flex spot. It's a nice ability because it deals damage, magic damage, quite a lot. And then the second text, if an affected enemy dies, you fill an empty soul gem and heal for 4000 health. You also restore 7000 Magicka and 3000 stamina. 7000 Magicka from one ability. So whereas I place this on the highest health target, I will place this one on the lowest health target. So the moment it dies, I will get 7000 Magicka and 3000 stamina back. We already have kind of enough sustain, so you don't necessarily need this, but it's a nice mechanic to play around anyway. Thunderous Rage, your AoE ultimate deals a lot of damage. Shock can apply concussion as well. The back bar we have Crescent Sweep. You can use this or the big ulti. It's really up to you. It's nice pulse damage. It only costs 71 ultimate. Channeled Focus, so that's an ability that you always want to keep on the ground. First off, let's read the text first. You get Major Resolve, increasing physical and spell resistance by 5280. Let's see how long is it active still. 3 seconds. So now I have like, around 10k physical resistance. I drop this and I get 15k, and when I stand inside the rune it bumps up even more. So we can be really tanky as long as you stand in the rune. But even moving out of it, it will keep working. On top of that, you also get 240 magic every second for free. So this thing has to be up all the time. You can place this on the ground before you engage. Very strong. Solar Barrage. Nice damage over, well, kind of like pulse damage. AoE. And it also gives you Empower, so your light attacks do more damage. You could replace this with something else if you really want to. It's not a mandatory skill, but it's nice to have, and you can also activate it before you engage the enemy. Ritual of Retribution deals damage quite a lot, has a huge radius, and also heals you at the same time. So as long as you have the rune and the ritual on the ground, you're not gonna die. You just see how much healing there is in this setup just passively through abilities. It's crazy. So this one is nice. Then we have Blazing Spear, another damage over time effect that deals really strong damage and can also proc Burning Light. Unstable Wall of Storms, another damage over time ability. After the last tick happens, it will explode as well, so it will deal explosion damage. When an enemy has minor vulnerability on them, and that usually happens from shock abilities or the charged weapon enchantment here, and Blockade is on him too, you can set them off balance. Once off balance, especially if our champion points, we will do 10% more damage because of the Exploiter passive perk from the champion points. And once again, they're set off balance, you restore twice the amount of resources from heavy attacks. Very powerful. So this thing here is like, this always you need to learn to keep this on the ground all the time. This and the rune, they're the two most important abilities. There's a lot of other abilities that are like useful if you need the gap closer, if you want to execute and stuff like that. There's a lot of cool things. I would recommend experimenting around a little bit just to see how it is. Before we check out the outfit, let's take a quick look at like the most important things again. Dodge rolling and blocking and shielding is your most important task that you need to learn, because you can avoid so much damage by dodge rolling. The more you will play the game, the more mechanics and pattern of bosses you will learn, so you will at some point you will know when you have to dodge roll or block and shield up. It will become pretty like automated at some point, I guess is the right word. And you need to understand how important buff foods and potions are. You gotta get them. They're very, even if you only use the cheap potions and the very cheap buff foods, they're very powerful. They pump up your stats like crazy. Understanding how much healing you have on this setup through Ritual of Retribution, and the damage mitigation through Channeled Focus and extra sustain, the healing from puncturing sweeps, the sustain from consuming trap, from elemental drain, and all that stuff is very important. When I drop low on health, I can just pop my shield real quick and then jab and heal back up. Usually before the enemy gets through my shield, I will be max health already. Ice Heart, very powerful because it can proc the shield and save you. Get Imperfect False God if you have access to Sunspire. It's very powerful. Then you can work slowly up to get the perfect version, but no hurries. We have a lot of damage over time effects to manage. You don't need to have them all active at the same time, but always prioritize the healing stuff, like Ritual of Retribution or the damage mitigation. Can be very easy to forget that stuff, so you could technically also swap that to the front bar and make it like this, if that's safer for you. That's the reason why I have the harness Magicka shield on the front bar, because often people have issues with weapon swap or it's laggy, and then by the time you weapon swap you're dead, so that really helps if it's on the front bar. Let's take a quick look at the outfit. Ebonheart hat, epaulets, the gloves, Deadwater breeches, then we have the Mystic Eye Sigil cuirass, Ebonheart sash, Ebonheart shoes, and the Ebon Shadow stuff. Cold Harbor ash black and Divine gold colors. To get the glowy eyes, I do have the Draw Matra thingy active. It's pretty cool, like you can kind of change the colors of your eyes with this setup if you really want to, which is pretty sick. I really like it. If you have any questions about the setup, you can either join our community Discord, link in the description below, or ask me on twitch.tv/alcasthq. When I'm live, I usually answer as much, or try to answer as much questions as possible. But when I'm busy, like raiding or doing any activities, sometimes I can't focus right away. So just, if I don't answer, just ask again. You can watch a few other videos right here if you want to. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the juicy like button. Thanks for watching and have a nice day. Cheers.